Okay, let's make a start. Nā mana, nā reo, nā hauiwha, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Nau mai haere mai ki tēnei kaupapa o te wā. Nau mai haere mai ki Aotearoa Educators Collective Substack, looking at the arts curriculum tonight. Ko Peter O'Connor tuku ingoa, ko Ngāti Pākehā te iwi no Tamakina Kaurua Hau, ko Aoharangi o Waipapa Taumata Rau, the University of Auckland. And it is my real pleasure, before introducing our two other panelists tonight, to acknowledge and thank the Aotearoa Educators Collective, of which I am a very proud member, for hosting this. The collective sets out to provide a way of seeing the curriculum based on research and evidence, much of it gained here in Aotearoa, and a desire to see a rich, not necessarily just a knowledge rich, but a rich curriculum that prepares children for the world in which they already live, and to help them to imagine a better world for themselves and for others. So again, acknowledging the collective. If you're joining us and don't know the work of the collective, do take the opportunity to go to the website, Facebook page, and a whole range of things. I have two colleagues and friends, people I've had the pleasure of working with in the arts for many, many years. And so I'll pass over to them to introduce themselves, and then we'll get started. I'll after they've introduced themselves, I'll talk a little bit about the format of this evening.
Who's it?
You go, Claire. Yeah. You just spoke.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Pai Coleman tuku ingoa. Hi, everyone. So, full disclosure, I was the lead writer for the arts curriculum from the end of 2022 until the beginning of 2025. So I wrote led the work on the refreshing that was done under the previous government, and this new draft that we're going to talk about today is not what I worked on at all. Quite obvious for obvious reasons. I have some, feelings about things in that respect. Prior to joining the ministry to do that work, I was an arts academic, and I continue to do various bits and pieces in that space. I worked for many years at the University of Waikato, and I have worked with both Peter and Annette in various capacities, and thoroughly enjoyed that time. So, yeah, that's me. Annette, I shall turn to you.
Kia ora koutou, everybody. Ko o te tahi toku kāinga, ko pera hitini ahau, ko mahi whakaari Aotearoa Drama New Zealand. So, tēnā koutou katoa. I am Annette Thompson. My main sort of reason for being here is I am the kaiarahi at the moment for Whakaari Aotearoa Drama New Zealand, and that has been my passion for the last few years, is supporting teachers from all sectors, from ECE right through to tertiary, in drama, and so it's become a part of providing resources and support, and so the curriculum has sort of been swirling around in lots of different ways around that time, and very passionate about the direction it's taking at the moment, and I feel like I'm kind of in a fight at the moment to preserve what we have here in Aotearoa, and how important that is to us as a country, and our own identity and our own humanity. So yeah, big picture thinking, I guess, from me. I also work in initial teacher education, so really really about teachers and about the children that they're teaching. So that's me.
Sure, Amy, and maybe just a little bit more about myself. I'm a professor at the University of Auckland, have been for a number of years. I was involved in the 2001 arts curriculum. I was the national facilitator for drama and oversaw the introduction of the curriculum. I was involved in the 2007 curriculum. You're all thinking, gosh, and he only looks 25. But, I did that. And then I was involved in the refresh with Tima Taiho, a really wonderful experience where one had a deep sense of coherence and a philosophical underpinning of the curriculum document that was intellectually rigorous. So that was, really exciting. I'd spent, I think, a grand total of about 14 hours on this current refresh, and decided for my health that I needed to take a permanent lie down in response to what I witnessed. So I get, I've written, I have over 100 publications around arts education, written or edited over 10 books. It's something that I've been doing for a very long time. So I have a deep sense of um, the tragedy that's befalling arts education in Aotearoa with this new draft curriculum. But what we thought we'd do is we'd spend some time, and although this government doesn't like the idea of putting anything in a context, they like to sort of ship it out somewhere else and discuss it on its own when it comes to curriculum areas. We thought we'd put the arts in the wider curriculum context and our sense of how this fits in with that. Then spend a bit of time talking about the actual draft and then open it up for conversation. So we thought it might take somewhere around 30 minutes to get to that point where we could talk. We could open up for some conversation. So great. There's 50 odd people have joined us, and so there will be that opportunity for comment and question if we can work the technology. And of course, only music has technology. The other arts disciplines don't. So we would be struggling, of course, unless we were to sing or something, because we know only music has technology in the new curriculum. So I guess it's that sense of where does this fit for you, Claire or Annette? We've been told multiple times this is a knowledge-rich, only one science of learning curriculum. I think that, everyone says that. So what's your impression of what's landed so far, and how this before we talk about where it fits? Claire?
Yeah. Well, I guess in terms of, obviously, I kind of come from what had gone before with Taiho, and then moving into this new sort of shift of it's going to be science of learning and knowledge rich and internationally comparable. Although, they didn't know internationally comparable with who or what those two things didn't have solid definitions for them when I was still there and before I took that lie down that you spoke of, Peter. But in terms of where it sits, it's very much the idea is that all of these curriculum documents look the same. And in terms of moving away from sort of deep conceptual knowledges through the understand those conceptual things, and then having the knows and the do's that we had previously. This is now sort of a know. We know that something and we know how something, and it's very laundry list kind of stuff, which is evident in the other curriculums. A comment was made to me by a small school principal about their staff had looked at this curriculum and said, "Oh, it's just like maths." So I think that tells you quite a lot about the way in which it's been. They've attempted to kind of format all of the different learning areas into one model, whether that model works for those learning areas or not. And as a result, the knowledge, I guess, that's been placed into the arts is very much, there's a bunch of facts, and they're sort of telling you, a few things that you should be doing, but it's lost any sense of heart or soul. And to me, the overarching thought I had, and it is, I think, broadly of all of the curriculum, is a little bit, so what? So it's a lot of stuff, but why are the learners and why are tamariki going to care? And that's kind of the element that seems to be absent from this approach. It's a lot of stuff that someone has decided, and you can see very much which knowledges are being valued and privileged. Notions of learners of having agency to generate their own knowledge or creative process or any of those types of things is absent, both in the arts curriculum but also in the other ones. And when we did the webinar on science at the end of last year, I think it was interesting how many of the things that were being spoken about there had resonance for me in terms of the arts, in terms of the nature of the learning area and the why it's actually really important and how it's going to be valuable and resonant with young people. And so that's the part now that seems to just have gone.
Thanks, Claire. And do you want to add to or subtract?
Yeah. So for me, I was thinking about like what a word would sort of sum up this, and I sort of initially came up with inconsistent, because it doesn't. For me, it's like putting, for the arts anyway, I feel like we're a round peg being sort of forced into a square hole somehow, and we don't quite fit. And it's because of that conceptual understandings and the creativity that we bring. And then the front end of the curriculum talks about capabilities like creativity and relating to others, which we do so well in the arts, amongst other things. And they're supposed to be within the rest of the curriculum, but I can't see it. I can't see all those capabilities, those things that we know that, well, in drama, for example, that we do so well. Used to be called key competencies, have kind of mushed it into this new thing, but it's still got some similar things. And it's what we do all the time. And so I can't see them there. And therefore I'm going, what is there? And it's really inconsistent across the whole the arts curriculum. It's sometimes incoherent, and it doesn't feel like a Aotearoa New Zealand curriculum. It doesn't feel like us. It's not been built together in partnership with Pacifica and Māori, and so it doesn't feel like it's from us. Those kind of things are like tagged on or at the bottom of columns or as an example, rather than actually embedded and created as a curriculum moving forward together into the future. So inconsistent for me, but also a little bit heartbreaking because all the work that we've been doing to further all that stuff that we've just talked about doesn't seem to be there. And so it's like, well, what then? What does that mean for us? Yeah, as educators in the arts.
Yeah. And I get, I've been looking to make a submission on the physical education and health curriculum, and it's equally appalling. It's just shocking. It's badly written. There's no. I cannot uncover any notion of progression at all.
Yeah,
It's kind of like, well, we'll learn this in year one because someone's thought that was a good idea, and then we'll learn this I was going to say levels, but we don't, year one, and then we'll learn that in year two, and somehow that will stick to that knowledge there, and that will stick. So, although there's been a coherence group, it's the most incoherent curriculum I think I've ever kind of seen. It's intellectually impoverished, the depth of intellectual academic engagement with what actually a curriculum is. And I've been involved in writing curriculum for over 20 years. And what does a curriculum document serve? What's a national curriculum about? it should provide a map, and the map should allow a freedom for professionals to negotiate and work their way through in terms of the context in which they are. So this new curriculum is one which demonstrates there's no trust in the profession. And so what we'll do is instead of an actual curriculum, we'll just give them a shopping list of facts that they can teach. If there's a collapse. Sorry, Annie.
I was going to say, I think it's really about the teacher. It's not really about the student or the child. We're positioning the teacher as the one with the knowledge, and they're going to teach this to the child. It's not about centering the child as part of the center of the curriculum. So who is it for? Who is this curriculum for?
And so, part of it drives a particular pedagogy as well. So, one of the conflations which this curriculum just gleefully indulges in at one level is a return to a kind of teaching and learning that privileges a teacher standing as the fount of all knowledge at the front of a room, drilling facts into children's heads. And doing that in the arts is difficult for a whole range of reasons. But it's also, one of the things, if I think back to the arts curriculum when it came out in 2001, it was the only arts curriculum in the world that had Ngā Toi, a separate Indigenous arts-led curriculum. I was literally invited all over the world to talk about our world-leading curriculum. And when Claire and I and others, when we sat down with Te Mataiaho, it was about refreshing. Because it was 20 years later. It wasn't about chucking all that away because someone has a brain fart about the science of learning. I mean, really, and saying we're going to do this other thing.
But it's not even doing that either, Peter, because I think like if you go with the notion that right, we're going to make this easier for teachers because I'm going to tell them exactly what to do, and we're going to make it very prescriptive, and as you say, it will just be the teacher teaches these things. It's not doing that either. It's in places it's indecipherable. They've gone some parts of it, they've thrown everything but the kitchen sink in, and so it's full of stuff that's not really real content. And then in other places, it's, as you said, very impoverished. And so as a result, it's not something you can pick up and go, right, it's in places a list of things, but it doesn't give you any sense of how you weave that together, how a teacher's going to interpret and make, and there's no, because the three different, because they've put them in these, performing arts, and we'll talk about that in a minute, and music and visual art, they've put them in these three new strands, but they are all very clearly Frankensteined together. They don't speak to each other. They're different sizes. They've got different types of things as been defined as the knowledge, what I'm calling the no, because there are no practices really. It's either we tell you a fact you need to impart, or we tell you a thing you need to teach them to do. But there's no,
no.
It's all knowing of a thing that then is very, just product orientated. Just show me the thing that you can do and we can tick it off on a list. But it's not even effectively a very solid, again, it's not a solid list, and it's not a solid prescription that someone could pick up and go, oh yeah, I'll do these things. Because
if you get AI to write it, or you get someone in Australia to write a New Zealand arts curriculum, because I can't imagine who else did it, that's what you end up with, really, isn't it? I don't know.
Well, I think it's one of the practical considerations, if you're doing a big picture things, was I think it's soulless. It's inconsistent about how it's treating those three strands, and it's not teachable. There's no time. Where's the time that's going to be provided to do this? Some of these things are essential, are about how the children will sit and fold their arms during a singing lesson, or, and because they've got, as I said, because there's no model really doesn't, a lot of our arts, what would have been previously our understands are our big conceptual things. it means you've got the repetition of that at various phases. And you say that doesn't make there's no progression to something that's about,
No.
I understand that the arts communicates notions of, those kinds of statements.
I struggle across the whole curriculum to understand notion of progression and that causes or the writers, if you were to be generous enough to call them writers of the curriculum, their understanding of what progression and learning means, or so much assessment, and yet what does it mean? What does it mean to get better at the arts? What does it mean to do those things? And whoever wrote this curriculum for the arts, I can't see any rich understanding of what it means to be better, to do better, to understand more about the arts and how you actually structure and do that.
No, and it's
one would have hoped for some coherence.
It's a lot more of that. More of. I mean, dance, for example, like years 0 to 3, dance uses body shapes, levels, and pathways. Years 4 to 6, dance uses spatial relationships and formations to express. Dance 7, 8, they're all the same thing with different words, right? They're the same. They're the same thing. So you're just doing more of.
And that comes back to that round and peg in a square hole, because the arts are not linear. You don't go from one to the other. It is very messy and not linear. People still progress, but how do you put that into the structure? I think the structure is not right.
The counterpoint to that, and I do think visual arts, of the 3 strands, visual arts seems to be one which is the most palatable, in that you can see a sense of that, and you can see some of the threads of the things we're talking about still in that content. Music, because of the way that the music has been written, and it's very Eurocentrically divided, it's notation and it's very formalized and it's got lots of, cultural things embedded in the structure. But because it's talking about the kind of language of music and the way you need to learn, this note to go to this thing, there are parts of that are linear and are hierarchical, and they sit in a way because that's what they're defining music as being, right? So they've defined that to be the kind of, grade 1 theory. I mean, the whole section of music, and they've got 3 different sections with, 4 other subjects. The whole section of that's about is essentially the elements of music, because music has elements and nobody else does. But the music of elements is essentially a theories. It's the whole theory section from a European, we're going to.
Can I ask you? Because it's so uneven. Moving now into thinking about the actual document. Now that they collapse dance and drama into something called the performing arts, which doesn't make much sense when you're 5 years old. In fact, it's insulting.
It's unsafe.
It's unsafe. It's just so, yeah.
And there are things that are within that. They've got dance and drama. Te ao haka, that becomes a subject at year 11, but there's nothing throughout the rest of the thing apart from examples or kind of really, really tokenistic ways of talking about te ao haka. Don't get me started on that. But we're a performing arts, dance and drama, and some of the things within that, the complete lack of understanding of what they are. They talk about space, for example, as a setting. So that really somebody who has no idea about even the terminology of dance and drama, and we're kind of merged together somehow, but not really. So it just totally diminishes, devalues our practice and what drama in education has been for as long as it's been in the curriculum. We are not training little actors to be performers on the stage, and it shouldn't be performance.
Someone's just asked, and Kate, I think, just asked a question to pick up on this idea of unsafe. to have this notion of 5, 6, and 7-year-olds doing the performing arts and why that is, and I can think of multiple reasons, and it beggars me that well, actually says something. The person who ever wrote the dance drama thing has clearly not read anything about dance and drama education in the last 100 years and what we do, because they would not write that nonsense. It's as simple as that. But Annette, can we just have that brief moment about why it's unsafe to have 5-year-olds doing that kind of work?
Because if you think about it, do you want every single kid to be up performing? The performing arts, as it is written in the thing, is all about performance, either being a performer or watching performances. And so it's really interesting that at the other end of the scale, they've just put out the descriptors for every subject in the curriculum, and what they're talking about in these descriptors is about which pathways you're going to go on and what job you're going to do. And we had, as a subject association, had to look at the initial one, and it was all about going into the creative industries. And we went, well, hang on a minute. The arts lead and drama in particular lead to a whole lot of different things. Just like you're not training little 5-year-olds to be scientists or mathematicians, you are training them in the process of being of exploring science and exploring things. So we want young 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds to be exploring the arts and to be investigating what it feels like to collaborate with somebody else, to imagine themselves in the shoes of others, be able to think about others' perspectives and other ways of being, and what it might be like to be that kind of thing, what it might be like to be a scientist, and playing that out in the classroom. If we're saying performance, suddenly we've got audiences, we've got people having to present something rather than connecting with the arts in other ways. So incredibly unsafe to say that, and not having teachers, generalist teachers, who are going to be putting people on the stage.
Well, I guess I mean two things. One is once if you want to kill a child's interest in the arts, have something which is kind of what this force them put their artwork up for judgment really early on. Anyone is watching this and has had that happen to them in the visual arts, dance, music, or drama, and had it happen to them when they're young, that's it. It's all over. You're never coming back to it because of the shame of all of that. And the second thing, which really irritates the hell out of me, because when they talk about the science of learning, is it the science of learning? I always get confused. Science is something they talk about. One of the things that I know about learning when you're 5 and 6 is that key and central to this, and Vygotsky and Bruner is play. Social and imagined play. That's where you start an arts curriculum, not in performance.
No.
To even imagine that's where you start is intellectually impoverished. And it's just kind of bizarre.
It's also that if you look at the document, they in that section at 0 to 3, their participation is just to watch something, right? And they don't get to do it. I mean, they talk a little bit about the statement, but it's not in the content. And then suddenly at 4 to 6, they're meant to suddenly start devising and making, or producing things. You're like, well, how have they been scaffolded into that? I mean, you'll get a 5-year-old to get up on stage and perform. No, I'm not saying that they won't, but again, you're also making, you can't do this to children straight off the bat. And also you're making it then about talent, because it becomes who's talented at the art form. And if you're not, I mean, the music again is like, they will sing in tune. Well, you've got children who are tone deaf. You've got children, you've got children who are never going to sing in tune.
Who can't clap?
So that comes back to accessibility too, doesn't it? Because if I notice in the drama curriculum at year 9 and 10, I think this is in 7 and 8 as well, in the performing arts one, is learn about sound and lighting and set and props and costume. Well, some schools don't have access to those kind of things. Musical instruments. is every kid going to be able to have access to musical instruments? And so accessibility to those particular things and stages, and it says watch a live performance. Does everybody have access to watch live performance? So yeah, accessibility of this art curriculum too is something to think about.
But it's mind-numbing, isn't it? This idea that you engage children at 5 with the arts by having them sit and watch.
Yeah.
I mean, there's this anecdotally what they're doing because of cognitive overload. You have to take images off walls. God forbid, the cognitive overload of engaging outside a classroom with the wealth of what's in the world. But if you were really following the science of learning, well, even if it's just science, you would begin an arts curriculum in social and imagined play, which has got nothing to do with performance when you're 5 years old. Anyway,
it's really interesting. We had a Official Information Act asking about why they put drama and dance together and the reasoning behind that, and the ministry came back with they sounded the same, which is a complete lack of understanding of what that means. They sounded the same, and that the curriculum was too large and they needed to make it smaller. So guess who got to be the ones that made it less cognitive overload for all the children?
Yeah, can you imagine 5-year-olds imagining? Can you? I mean, it's kind of it's the old Ken Robinson thing, and I used to say, if we were to design an education system to kill creativity, we couldn't do better than the one we've got. Well, he was wrong because we weren't doing too well before.
Yeah.
But this one is just awful.
I know.
It's just awful. It's just. And it's kind of like, it's not as if we don't have people in this country who know about arts education. We led the world in arts education. BB, Povey, the arts and craft movement in this country. It was at the time that we had an extraordinarily successful education system. Outside, of course, the way in which we punish Māori for being Māori. But let's be really clear. We didn't just throw away international evidence. We threw away the legacy of that extraordinary work that was done by Tovey, by Hawkeri, by Cliff Whiting, by those artists who worked and brought that in, grounded here in Aotearoa, if you're still allowed to use the word.
I'm going to chip into this because, Annette, you brought up the OIA, so I just feel compelled to share my OIA responses because I can see people are upset by yours and this will really make their blood boil. So when I was at the ministry and for the time that we were there, we were still under the new administration, we were doing things like writing a position paper that was supposed to set out the direction that we were going to take with the work on the arts curriculum for the new minister. And it had to be approved by her, and it was a very long-winded process and lots of back and forth about the words we were allowed to use and that kind of thing. And, and all of the learning areas had to have these things, and it was going to be the founding document for all of the work that should be what this draft has now been based on. When I OIA'd about what they used after I had left, they came back and said they didn't have one, and they'd never had, since I left, there was no foundation paper. When I asked about, they won't tell you who wrote any of it, and they won't tell you any evidence or research that they used to underpin any of it. So, it's not just that that's our hunch that this is incoherent and inconsistent and insulting to teachers, because it looks like it hasn't been based on anything. It really hasn't. And I think, what you're talking about, I think, and what the frustration here is that, obviously, I had my experience with it with Peter before, and we had, written something, and that's obviously not what's come to pass. But this that we've been sent is clearly not based on any real solid anything. And that is very, it's really insulting, I think, to the kaiako and the leaders and the children to send this out for consultation when it is so woefully undercooked.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I kind of had this, you get used to it working in arts education that, we're treated with such disdain and kind of dismissed, as a nice to have. Now, of course, rather than a nice to have, we're
And
a
I think
once to
that's
have.
how this is positioned the arts now. I think this has very
Yes.
much positioned the arts as nice to have. It's a commodity. You can get something from it. You can show it's utilitarian. We can enculturate you through this. And if you haven't got any talent about it, it says what art forms are valuable, what's real and proper. It really positions the arts as a kind of,
Yeah.
additional thing.
The really good, the redeeming feature, I guess, is that no one's actually going to teach this because it's unteachable. And they'll be so busy sitting there spelling out words so that they can pass the test and say that now everyone can read. So I guess, that, for me, the silver lining, the arts didn't do well under the previous lot, and we had a world leading curriculum that got squeezed out because we were focusing on literacy and numeracy 25 years ago. I remember they cut, I was the national facilitator for drama, and they cut the money so they could put it into literacy and numeracy. So no, some things, they just never change. But I do have this sense that, a little bit like the social sciences, or, they'll just disappear in schools, really. And we'll just have to sort of wait till something kind of shifts and changes that. I don't know, that to me is the one saving grace. If that, and the fact that there are bloody good teachers who will ignore this, they and that's what will happen. They'll just go, nah, I know what my kids need. I know what has to happen, and I'm just not buying into it. Because this whole curriculum is all about not trusting professionals to do their job and replacing it with a shopping list of stuff that just drives them nuts.
With only 1 hour a week to teach the arts in as well.
Which I'm sorry, but I don't know how they got that number, because I had to crunch those numbers not long before I left the ministry. And with the hour a day for this and the hour a day for that, and then the time that's taken up with assemblies and roll call and all those kinds of things, and then you've got taken them out to do all the other learning areas. I don't know how they got to an hour, but I don't see that being a real hour. That's a theoretical hour. And particularly one of the other issues, and this is speaking to the whole curriculum, is because they are so siloed now and so kind of, fact orientated, and you do this thing and then you do this thing, there's no space for integration. And I don't know how a primary school teacher is, it really, as you said before, Peter, about the pedagogy that it's pushing people towards, it is, and now we're going to teach 30 minutes of science, and now we're going to teach 30 minutes of this, and everything will be decontextualized and not related. And we're going to make teachers' jobs that much harder because they're just going to be, and children will have nothing that resonates or connects with them.
Well, someone just put up, one way you can cover off your hour is do half an hour of kids in a hall singing.
Yeah, well, there will be a lot of that.
Yeah.
It's one of the contemporary elements.
The other thing, I guess, that we haven't talked about, which needs to be said, is that there is so much research, there is so much evidence that tells you that arts-rich schools, kids do better at literacy and numeracy. It's like, I don't know how much evidence you need to show for anyone to pay attention to that, but by stripping the arts out of schools, your literacy and numeracy is not going to go up. and drilling them with letters is not going to make a difference to inferential comprehension. If you really want kids to understand what sits at the heart of maths, music, pattern, rhythm. If you want kids to understand what sits underneath text, inferential comprehension, which is the thing we do badly at, it's about not decoding words. We actually don't do too badly in decoding words. What we do badly at is inferential comprehension, and time after time and study after study. It's drama because they climb into a story, don't perform it at 5, but they play inside the story because that's what you do when you're 5.
And they get to try out new words and
you get to try it. It's like, please, don't pretend that this is knowledge rich. Don't pretend it's informed by a science.
No.
It's just a grab bag of nonsense.
I do think too we have to talk about the fact, and this again goes to the whole curriculum, but it's really evident in certain pockets of this document whose knowledge and which children, or not which children, because it's not, but in terms of saying what arts, the repositioning of the arts or the recolonizing of the arts, it's very definitely happening in here. And again, I must say that I think visual art has done the best job of kind of trying to avoid this, and it's probably music where it's the most evident that through the kind of privileging of particular structures of what counts as music and how you behave to do music, there's a really strong element of that part of this document that's not really about why we engage in the music or what music can do or what music is. It's about the structure and the boundaries that particular cultures have placed on that, and it's going to very clearly exclude a lot of our tamariki and our communities.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that strikes me that's being pushed is that there's a binary between structure and creativity, or that the arts aren't structured. The arts are the most disciplined thing you can engage in. If you aren't disciplined, if you don't understand, know, and embody the discipline, you can't do the arts. And that structure, how you do that, how you are able to work with more complex material, how you develop greater control over your art form, how you're able to make choices which are aesthetic judgments, and being able to do that sits at the heart of structured work. Think of Cecily O'Neill's structured improvisation. Improvisation isn't just running around the room or standing on a stage pretending to be somebody so kids can laugh at you, which is kind of what sits in the current curriculum. It's actually about structuring knowledge, which is often, not often, is embodied. It's built, it's built into all of you. So, it's not there. Like, you can read that bloody thing and it's just not there.
I don't see too, and I think it's really unfortunate. It's a really unfortunate consequence, again, of the way this curriculum seems to have been written, that they're siloing out dance and drama and visual art and music and putting them in kind of adversarial positions, because there's nothing really I can see, not in the purpose statement and clearly not in the the content as you move forward, that actually speaks to why these things are the arts. What is the uniting fabric? Why are they together? And how do they support each other, and how do you transfer learnings and understandings, across the art forms in terms of those conceptual things? And that to me is also really, it's really sad, because it's again a kind of like, let's go backwards and all be fighting for our little individualist corner and sort of, setting up these false boundaries and false kind of competition between art forms.
Because life's not like that, eh? Like life is integrated. We are we're doing some technology now. I've got some artwork behind me. I listen to music on the way home on the radio in the car. I know how to drive my car. I know how to change a tire. It's where I live my life in a complex learning kind of way, and all the subjects and all the things are integrated. When we get out into the world, as part of our jobs, we might be doing all sorts of different subjects. So why are we siloing them and saying that this subject leads to this? Because it in real life and in the world outside education, that's not what life is like. We live integrated. We do our jobs. Even if you're a statistician, you are still processing and complexing and thinking about these things in different ways. So it frustrates me that it's so that this has become such a siloed thing, and that we are teaching children to think of them in that way. It's kind of perpetuating that myth too, that we only do this subject for a particular time because it's not as important as this particular subject, which you need to be really good at to actually pass the exams or to pass the whatever, to go on to university, because that's the most important thing. When do we ever decide that? And yet, yeah, what are we? It comes back to the purpose of education, I think, too. What are we doing? Are we? Is the purpose of education to create human beings, great citizens of the world who go out and joyfully embrace life?
Ask annoying questions and
No, look, sorry.
And all kinds of terrible things like that. No.
Look, sorry, you're getting silly now. We all know the purpose of education. It's about individual achievement, so you can get a high paying. Oh no, you can't get high paying. You can get a more. No, I think the purpose of education is academic achievement. That's what we've been told, and so the arts aren't seen as academic, and of course they're richly, deeply academic. So that's difficult for them. But everything is so narrowed and constrained, so that because context isn't welcome, to a basic level, we have a curriculum that's not grounded here, doesn't really belong here. It just it could have been written in Azerbaijan, or whatever, and you just, stick a couple of whakatauki in to make it kind of belong here, but not really. There's no engagement. And you just end up with discrete skills. I mean, it's a silly thing of, I think it's in one of the years you learn how to do a freeze frame. What in God's do you want to learn a bloody freeze frame for? It's just
it just whacks bits of thing in different places because you have to whack it in. I mean, that's how it feels, right? Like, we'll put a few over here. We'll sprinkle a few over in face.
Yeah, that one will do. Oh, but
it doesn't make any sense.
But no sense at all about when, why, and how, or the context in which you would use it. No sense that maybe it might be useful when you're working with a text, because the only thing it seems to me that you do with the text is either report on it or decode it for hours. So it seems that that's part of what drives the business. And then that, I guess, within a wider context, we have it dying within initial teacher education, and all three of us have been involved in seeing what's happened to the arts and initial teacher education. And it just,
Which is again why, as you said, Peter, probably it won't get, like, if this goes, and I've just been doing a thing on how long there is between the consultation period and the final rollout of this thing, whether or not you think that 7 weeks is long enough to read all the submissions and then consider the feedback and then rewrite things or not, for 6 different learning areas. But as we've said, it's so unwieldy and undercooked and isn't doing any of the things that even will it get taught? Because as you said, don't have teachers with the capacity, the resources, the time, and this thing is not telling them exactly what to do if they have no idea. Like, it really isn't, which that's one of the things she keeps going on about. We're like, we're just going to make it easy. So it's a script and you just it's not doing that either.
And the irony is that other countries like the UK are going, we need to put drama back into our curriculum. It was put in with English and has been there for a while, and they're wanting to get it out. Music, Ed Sheeran talked about putting music back into the curriculum and getting it out there. So the arts for them, they're going, we need to get creative again and get our creativity back. And so other people are looking to our curriculums. We are part of a group that is Australasian group that looks at drama, and people like China, like Singapore, are looking to us because of the really rich drama and education that we've had for many years. And the irony is, here we are looking down the barrel of this curriculum that devalues the arts in our curriculum.
I don't think they thought about the arts at all. Like, I mean, when I was there, we were the last people they were going to look at. They threw out what we wrote basically because we wrote for the other lot. So they didn't read it or look at it. And they really don't know what it is, so they just don't care. It was like, it's got to fit in the knowledge. And the fact that it doesn't fit into that kind of schema, and they had no idea, I can tell you this right now because they told me, they had no idea how to get it into this schema, but they were just going to do it. So, there's no level of care. It's not that they've deliberately come after.
We can see that too with the rhetoric that comes about talking about STEM subjects with the kits that have just come out for science, technology, English, maths, but not anything for arts, PE, health, and those and languages. It talks about if you look at the year plans, lesson plans, and unit plans for year 9 and 10. The arts have only got year plans. Everyone else has got, not saying really great, but
Look at that year plan because it's horrible.
It is pretty bad.
Plan. It's not a plan. It's just they made that on AI, and it took about 2 minutes.
At another level, I remember when we were working on the 2001 curriculum in 2007. These issues of how you fit, because if you look at Elliot Eisner's work, for example, about how we learn in the arts, and it is different. It's why we have the art. If we all, I know the minister thinks we all have the same brains and we all learn in the same way, but we don't. And one of the reasons why we have disciplinary knowledges, and it is that the arts aren't just a way of expressing our thinking; they are a way of thinking. Look at Eisner, the creation of the mind, all of those kinds of things. But we really struggled in 2001 to do that, and I think of the people who were involved in that: Trevor Thwaites, Tina Hong. I'm trying to think of the visual arts person, genuine experts. That curriculum went around the world and was reviewed and came back and saluted as a stunning piece of work. I remember being involved in 2007, and Mary Chamberlain was leading that work. And you can argue, Mary and national standards, but the thing about that work, it was intellectually rigorous. You didn't write crap and get away with it.
No.
And, it was held up to peer review, and that peer review was not about sticking it out into the world, because you would never stick out what they stuck out in the arts or in health and PE or any of the other subjects if that had peer review by experts who really know their stuff. And so we've ended up in this mess. And I guess that's what worries me. I can't even imagine who will answer these critiques.
No,
when they go in. But when I think back to the expertise, the Catherine Gibbs, who was the national facilitator for the arts, Camilla Highfield, Dr. Camilla Highfield, Deputy Dean now at the Faculty of Education and Social Work. I think of Maren Dunmore, Anne Brodie, myself, and others. Absolute expertise in this, because we spent our life thinking about it, not 15 minutes.
And
on a bus.
again, that's why it's really, as you know, Peter, super emotional for me, because we did that work and we were building on that and we were refreshing from that content, and we had the right, we had those people, and we were going through it was still a pretty quick process under the previous administration, but we were going through a rigorous process, and there were debates and there were, all those things going on to ensure that, we had something that was solid and was founded in evidence and research and using the expertise that we had and we could draw upon.
And I just know that
this is so insulting, I think, because I know it hasn't been, and it's just a complete lack of care.
One of the most exciting things about that work on Te Taiho, I think about the two other people that were the subject experts. Rawiri and my brain has stopped. Maria. Two Māori academics, richly steeped in the arts. And my God, they could have done with something like that in this, couldn't they? Because that is totally and the challenges that I got from those two about what is the nature of the art, what's the nature of learning in the arts, what does it mean when we talk about the arts here, that the arts are central to our identity as people, that it needs to be grounded. All of that just gone, just disappeared, because like if you can't cope with Maori words because they've got vowel sounds, can you imagine having a deep respect for ngā toi informing an arts curriculum in Aotearoa? Christina wanted to explore something and I missed a bit behind. Did you see it, Claire? It's really tricky. We're trying to answer questions as they come.
Yeah, so I think that was talking about what we can do to bring public attention to this disaster. And I'm not sure. I will help with that if you want to. I've certainly also more things to say. Jade is talking about people being struggling with the nature of the 2007 curriculum, and I think that's definitely a critique. And it was one of the things we were trying to address in the refresh, was that the 2007 version, when it slimmed down to that book, didn't have enough detail. But part of that was because, and please correct me, Peter, as you probably know more about this than I, but it was because at the same time as the slimming down to that, curricular document from the Orange books, we lost all the facilitators and all the PD that would have wrapped around that document to give teachers things to, more to go on rather than reliant on it. So it was a kind of combination of a slimmed down version of the curriculum and the loss of that professional development ITE support at the same time. And, it
was all connected.
And I think, Jade, that, as you say, that yes, there's more fact stuff in here, and music is certainly the place that there's the most of that, but it is wildly inconsistent in places. And I'm told, in terms of teachability, it's kind of gone the other direction now. There's so much of it. And some of it,
I know that a lot of the, I know that all of the arts subject associations are working really hard to advocate for the arts and on their own in their own spaces, but also together. We talk to each other and work together to try and advocate for the arts. And when there are, I think part of the thing that's sort of really hard at the moment is that everything's happening so fast, and everything has happened so fast. And 1 minute this comes in and then the other things come in, and it's really hard to try and kind of not be reactionary, but also kind of get an alternative message out there, because the narrative is so strong. But we're trying our best. But we're really advocating for people to make submissions, make personal their own submissions into this arts curriculum, to say this is not okay. We're putting out, and I know others are too, a kind of document that encourages you to submit a little bit about the 2007 curriculum, what we had or what we've got now, and the draft curriculum about what it looks like now, and then some questions and some key considerations to have a look at, so that you can sort of inform your own thing. Because one of the things we know from the ministry is that they don't necessarily they like the numbers of things. If lots of people are telling them that this needs to change, then we might get across the line in terms of change. So
they will count, if a group submits, they count it as one.
That's right. Yeah.
You'll have to send your own individual submissions. And to that end, I am trying to create a kind of snackable resource on that too for submissions.
I'm going to wrap this up because we've been going an hour and it's been a rich, passionate, deeply informed conversation. I've loved, as always, talking to you both. In terms of final word, I'm just going to ask you just one sentence only, just to, because otherwise we'll just keep going. One sentence to finish up. Annie, you look primed. Go on. This is called performance.
I hope, because drama and the arts should always have hope, that we can stand strong in who we are in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and make our voices heard, that the new curriculum for the arts should be child-centred and hopeful.
Lovely long sentence. Claire, can you make it shorter than that?
We ain't going to do it. Maintain your joyful resistance.
Well, I think that's the perfect end. Hope, inspired resistance. Because hope is an action. Hope isn't driven by optimism that the result might be what we want. Seamus Heaney says, we hope not because we are optimistic for something. We do it because there's no other choice. And so for me, there's no other choice. I'd rather do anything else than be fighting this bloody government over their curriculum. But I don't have a choice because I've got grandchildren. And even if I didn't have grandchildren, I believe in the importance of an education that inspires and brings joy and light into life. So thank you very much. Claire, you can make us dead. Take the live off. We're going to go and deal with the dwarf.
Ka kite.
Ka kite. She pushed the button and nothing happened. See you in a little bit.